What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Understable Discourse and this week's edition of Chain Reaction, where we go back in time to this past weekend and talk about the event that just went down. And boy, oh boy, did we have an event go down with the USDGC and the Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championship. Let's get into it. Now, this past weekend was the last major of the year for the MPO field at the USDGC, going down at the Winthrop Gold Course, along with the Throw Pink Women's Disc Golf Championship. Now, not a major for the ladies, and just an A tier, but I think a major in a lot of our hearts. And not an insignificant event, especially when we realized that this was a big deal for four particular individuals vying for a position in potentially the Player of the Year race for the DGPT. But when we look at the event, some seriously interesting things went down, and some rough patches down the stretch, some reignited rivalries, a lot of fun things. So let's get into it. But we're going to start over on the MPO side of the aisle. And, the course itself, playing pretty tough as always. It was a very windy weekend, and so when you add wind to Winthrop, it gets a little crazy out there. It definitely gets a little bit crazy, especially when you consider some of the new changes that we saw to the course itself. A couple of those major changes that we're going to talk about are, first of all, on hole 3, where we saw the addition of a new pin position off to the left. And so when you go through both the Mandos, typically you go to the right. Now there's a pin position to the left, and it proved to be quite a difficult hole, as both the A position and the B position averaged over par for the MPO field, coming in at 0.37 for the A position and 0.17 for the B position over par. Hole 3 was nothing to shake your stick at while on the course. The biggest talking point of all of them, you have to forgive me if my voice is a little bit raspy here, going through some kind of allergy. I don't know what it is. So I got the deeper voice for you tonight. A little USDGC ASMR for you. But the biggest change we saw was specifically to hole 9 for the MPO field, and that was with the inclusion of a backed up tee pad, a real tree, and a couple different pin positions that put the screws into the field pretty well, with that tougher position coming up at 0.38 strokes over par. So they took the hole that is historically the second easiest on the course for the MPO field, and they turned it into the second hardest hole for the MPO field. And second hardest, I mean, just by a hair, because hole 18 came in at 0.39. So you have hole 18 at 0.39, hole 9 at 0.38, and hole 3 at 0.37. They took hole 3 and hole 9 and they turned them into legitimate problems for the MPO field. And it wasn't just the lower level players in the MPO field. It was a large number of players that struggled mightily, especially on the first day in some serious wind conditions with hole number 9. So it was really great to see them beef the course up a little bit. You can see that in round 1, hole number 9 averaged 0.52 strokes over par, and it kind of took the field a little bit of time getting used to the new position to sort of understand how to play it. But they eventually got there, and the wind changed as the week had gone on. A little bit of rain in there too. But the MPO field was pretty solid across the board otherwise. Not too much other difference on the course making a big difference when it comes to the scoring itself. But diving into the actual action, coming out hot in the first round, shooting the only double digits round under par, was Paul McBeth. And there was a glimpse, and I know we've all kind of talked about it here, that Paul, with his play recently, has turned himself into a contender for USDGC, with his 2 wins here to kind of finish the season off at Idlewild and at GMC. Everyone was kind of saying, like, I could see Paul McBeth winning USDGC. And so when he comes out and he hits the hot round at 10 under, it definitely, I would say stirs the trees a little bit. Not too far behind him at 8 down, we had Corey Ellis and Andrew Marweed, and Evan Scott, Ty Love, Luke Taylor all tied at -7. So missing from the top group your typical names. I mean, not to say that we haven't seen Andrew Marweed and Corey Ellis play well this year, but none of the very typical names are in that list. And yeah, that's pretty crazy when you think about this course and what it can do. And one of the things that I predicted early on in the season when I appeared over on Debate Night and on Tour Life, I said that I thought this year on USDGC we were going to be getting a first-time winner for USDGC. So that was a big thing for me, and you could see on the scores that a lot of players in contention after the first round. Well, as you can imagine, as always, the chalk kind of rises to the top a little bit at some point. And in round 2, we see that happen. Paul McBeth shoots another 9 under par, putting him at 19 under, tied for the lead with longtime rival Ricky Wysocki, who shoots a blistering 13 under par with the only bogey being on hole 18, but he picks up the eagle on 10. An insane round for the books, and man, if he could have just parred hole 18 and finished at 14 down, that would have been something else. But still, being tied for the lead with Paul, and you have AB who shoots 10 down, advancing up to third place, and Luke Taylor hanging on to that solo 4th position to finish the day. Other notables, Kyle Klein shoots a 10 under par, has a really solid round himself, but then we just see some struggles across the rest of the field, especially from some players who played really well in round 1. One notable name that you haven't heard me mention at all up to this point is Gannon Buhr, who had a very, I would say, slow start in the first round, especially when you consider that his start for the first front 9, he went birdie, but then he went par, bogey, par, birdie, bogey. And he got the eagle on 10, but he followed that up with a double bogey on hole 11, basically erasing the eagle. Just a really rough round 1 at 3 down, and comes into round 2 and only shoots 6 down, which he goes on a birdie streak of 7 in a row from holes 4 through 10, but he hits that gauntlet of 12, 13, and 14. Bogey, kind of putting a real kibosh onto his round. So eyes are on Gannon of can he do something? Can he produce some kind of high-level excellent play to get himself into the conversation, because we've seen him do that on many occasions in the past. But going in round 3, everyone who said, I'm not going to pay for DGN Pro, I'm not going to do this, they see Ricky Wysocki and Paul McBeth tied at the top, and it's like, honey, get the credit card, I need to get DGN Pro right now, because the idea of a historic event like USDGC, these two facing off, Ricky trying to break his major major drought, Paul trying to get on the leaderboard there, tie it up with Kenny with the total major wins, and AB not far behind. I mean, it's an absolute, it's gonna be a barn burner of a round. And so yeah, it gets a little crazy. After round 2, we saw some fun shenanigans, including Ricky Wysocki beating an old man in ping pong, which I'll talk about in a minute. I have a couple opinions on that. But going into round 3, Ricky and Paul, not great third round. 2 under for Ricky, 3 under for Paul, and we see AB and Calvin hit the pair of 8 unders for AB to climb into a solo first place lead of 2 strokes, and Calvin to climb on to the lead card, being only 1 stroke back of Ricky, 2 of Paul, and 4 of Anthony Barella. And Gannon Buhr shoots the 9 down, getting him to 18. Now that's 6 strokes back. But when you look at the fact that both Ricky and Paul shot a 2 and a 3 down respectively, if Gannon could come out and pop off for a 10, 11, or 12 under par, he could put himself in the conversation depending on how this goes. Because now, if there wasn't a reason to watch before when it was Paul and Ricky, the lead card, Anthony Barella, Paul Macbeth, Ricky Wysocki, Calvin Heinberg, and Gannon Burr chasing with Niklas from the chase card. I mean, you can't script it better. You can't write it better. You got AB trying to get his first ever major, trying to put some kind of a punctuation mark at the end of a season that, people can argue that his average finish is better, whatever it may be, but a season that he is less excited about than he was last year. And you got the Paul and Ricky stories. Calvin on his first major, can he stretch and get a second? Gannon trying to win from behind and get his third USDGC. It is cinema. Go into the final round. Things get a little cray-cray. All right? So, guys get off to a pretty relatively, I would say, typical start at USDGC. A little slow in some cases. And we kind of get to that stretch of 9 through 13 where a lot of things can happen. Calvin picks up a bogey on 9. Ricky is in the middle of a 4-hole par streak that started with a bogey before that, so he's kind of fallen off the pace a little bit. And we see both AB and Calvin get the eagle on 10. The whole card birdies 11, which that is pretty impressive. The whole card birdies 11. You get through 12, you get through 13, and AB kind of goes on a 4-hole par streak. But here's the thing. Nobody else really does anything about it. Nobody else does anything about it. Paul pars 13 through 15. He gets the birdie on 16, but he double bogeys 17. Ricky puts on a little bit of a stretch here with a birdie on 15, 16, and then an eventual birdie on 18. But at this point, with the lead that he already had, AB has played himself into a position where on hole 16, he's sitting at 30 under par, and the next closest person is 4 or 5 strokes back. All he has to do is clear 17, clear 18, and he's golden. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of those moments where we kind of go back to Anthony Barella at the European Open years ago and absolutely just squandering it on hole 16. And hole 17, even though you eventually get to move up, you still have to land it on the island in your first 3 tries. So the fact that he's able to step up, execute the tee shot, get on the island, secure the par, walk into 18 knowing that he can probably double bogey the hole and it won't even matter at that point, is pretty incredible. Gannon Burr shoots a 4 down, not going to do it. Not going to do it. And AB walks in, perfect second shot on 18, lays it up under the basket and drops it in for his first ever USDGC title, first ever major title, and an absolute incredible way to cap off the season. Anthony Barella wins the USDGC, and our prediction of a first-time USDGC winner happening this weekend comes to fruition. So, huge congrats to AB. I know we're going to be trying to get him over on Tour Life this week to interview live, so make sure you go over to the Foundation Podcast channel and tune in to that tomorrow night at 8 p.m. We're going to be talking to AB and hopefully Missy as well. Jumping over to the FPO side, and yes, I know that I kind of just spoiled who it was, but if you're watching this, you probably already know who won. I don't know how I feel about this final round for the FPO. I'll be honest with you, up to that point, you've got the 4 ladies vying for the Player of the Year spot. Missy comes out hot. Silva comes out pretty decent. And you have Anneli Tugas Monaste putting down a pretty incredible first round. And nowhere to be found. I mean, you got Owen Scoggins sitting at even, but comparatively, that's 6 strokes back off the lead. And then Holland Hanley is somewhere. I mean, I'm scrolling down the list right now because I didn't even list what position she was in. She was tied for 33rd, shooting an 8 over par in the first round. Arguably, I mean, listen, this is the modern day FPO field. She could have probably shot 3 incredible rounds after that to shoot herself back into the event, but she didn't. +8, not going to get it done. Not what's to be expected from a previous winner out here. And Yeah, I would imagine if I'm Holland, I'm feeling pretty rotten walking off the course on day 1. Day 2 comes along, and lead card struggles. They struggle. Missy ends up shooting a +4, knocking herself back to tied for 4th with Cadence Burge. Not a lot of great things to talk about other than Anneli Tukas-Moneste shooting under par again, giving herself the solo lead by 2 strokes going into round 3. And once again, we scroll. Where is Own? Own is now back in 20th as she shoots +7 for the round with a 10 on hole 5. A 10 carded on hole 5. Holland Hanley shoots -2 to come back to +6. So it's possible. Where was that in round 1? Just still not going to get it done. Still not going to get it done. Going into round 3, surprise, surprise, nothing still from Own. And who shoots even, and Holland Hanley, who shoots +2. But we now have separation from 3 people who just shatter the course in round 3. It's kind of funny how in round 2 we see an incredible MPO round and a pretty poor round 3 for them, but it's the opposite for the FPO field where they shoot a pretty mediocre round 2 and a blazing round 3 with Anneli shooting 7 down, giving herself a solo lead 1 stroke over Missy Gannon, who shoots 10 under par to get to second place, tied up with Silva, who shoots 9 under par. So you now have Anneli at 13 down and both Missy and Silva at 12 down. And we're like, okay, this is going to be an incredible final round. We're going to get to, at this point, I think the big argument for a lot of people has been between Missy and Silva for Player of the Year. They both have the same number of wins. You could make an argument that Silva has beaten some better players, that Missy has battled against a better strength of field. It's all going to come down to this final round. And what a final round we get. As first of all, I'll say this. Anneli put up an incredible fight, but when you're coming into this final round, shooting +3 is not going to get the job done. She comes out, she shoots 5 straight pars, a birdie on 6, and then she never birdies again after that point, with a bogey on 11, 14, and a double on hole 16. And she ends up taking solo second place. An incredible event for her. I hope we see more of her in the future. I think she has a lot of talent and consistency that we got to see on display this weekend, and I would hope to see more of her on coverage in the future. Maybe she can take up the mantle of the next Estonian assassin. Shout out Ari Matty. But moving on to the other two, Missy and Silva, in a pretty solid battle, back and forth, and back and forth. And we get to hole 14, where we've got Silva, who at this point is she is up by 1. She's winning. She's beating Missy by 1 stroke. Silva throws it into the hazard. Missy gets a pretty easy birdie, but Silva cashes a C2 putt to save the par. Tied going into 15. Hole 15 has plagued Silva up to this point, playing it decently in rounds 1 and 3, but shooting an 8 on round 2. And we see something from Silva on the tee pad here that we have seen a decent bit in this event. And that is, I don't know whether I want to call it, see, some people were saying she's being very deliberate. She's being very, focused. To me, it felt a little bit like trepidation. That nervous energy. Because we see her on hole 15's tee pad. She's got her disc in her hand, and she keeps doing that thing where, when you have a disc and you don't like, I'll show you here. You don't like the grip, so you're holding it. You're like, nah, you can bring your hand off it, you grip it again, you bring your hand, you find you rotate, you find a spot on it. I do this all the time on the course. We're all spin it until I find that spot that I like. Kind of reminds me of back in the day with basketball where I'd find the right seam and how it felt. They all felt the same, didn't matter. But and then there were a couple moments where she'd look back at her bag and just look at the fairway. rotate her disc, and it just felt like she was extremely undecided about what she wanted to do or not confident about the shot. And she lets an absolute early release go into the trees. And then from there, she shanks it high off of the triple mando back into the trees, eventually taking a bogey on the hole. And just, I don't know. One of the points that was brought up was that the triple mando is only 180 feet off the tee. And I almost wonder, as good as Silva is at throwing her standstill backhands, maybe that should have been the play for her, to throw the standstill off the tee to get through the triple mando, because she seems to be extremely confident when she's throwing her standstill backhands. But I don't know. She definitely wants that one back. But still, only loses one stroke to Missy, who takes the par to Silva's bogey. So not out of the woods yet. And we know 16, 17, and 18, anything can happen. Absolutely anything can happen. So we get into hole 16, and Missy knows what she has to do. Missy just has to play consistent to finish the event. That's typically her MO, and it works for her most of the time. Silva steps up, and once again, we see that same, confusion on the tee pad, looking down the fairway, looking back at the bag, rotating the disc, and then she early releases it again into the hazard. From there, she putts it over the basket, OB. Cannot make the putt to save the double, and takes a triple bogey on hole 16. And pretty much slides herself right out of contention to Missy's par. Hole 17, Missy misses the island and does something that we don't see from any other competitor. And this was a really interesting point brought up by Paul Ulibarri on Tour Life last week when we were talking about what the difference between Missy is and a lot of other competitors. So many other competitors, when they miss those shots, they miss that island, you can see the frustration, you can see the confusion, whatever. Missy goes back to her bag and just sits there laughing with her caddy. As another competitor, that has to be unnerving to a certain degree, to see someone of that level of comfort in tough time. And Silva misses the island, and that's pretty much all she wrote. At that point, Missy can pretty much walk this in, and she does, taking down USDGC, the big purse, and I think moving to second all-time earnings for FPO, jumping over Kristen. Sorry if I'm wrong about that, but I think she's second all-time now, encapsulating the moniker of Big Money Missy, and I think shutting the door on the argument about who the player of the year is for the FPO field. So I think that one's pretty much done in the books. I think there's a lot to talk about regarding certain things in this event, but I want to save it for later during the off season. There's a significant thing that happens, I think, on hole 5 here, where we see the FPO field struggle mightily. But I want to talk about course design in the FPO in a separate video in the future. So we'll do that. Plus, I'm starting to leak out of my nose and my voice is starting to disappear. And I want to save a little bit of that for you, because this upcoming week on Wednesday, make sure you tune in for the Wednesday episode of Understable Discourse as we preview the Tour Championship. And I will be in Virginia playing on the amateur side of the Tour Championship. I'm going down. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I'm going to go get some time in over at New London, Ivy Hill, and get my reps put together and have a good time. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. Appreciate every one of you sitting here and being with me. Sorry for the late episode. Daycare was closed today, so I was being super dad and could not record earlier in the day. But if you like what you heard, leave us a like. What do you think about the event? Were you satisfied with the USDGC? Did you decide to pay for the pro coverage? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm very interested to hear what your perspective was. Did the cards being as good as they were and as close as they were, did that prompt you to jump in, or did you, out of principle, stay off? Well, what was the deal for your situation? But otherwise, hit the like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's the best way you can support us as we grow. Big things are coming down the pipeline. I'm super excited. I'll catch you all next time. And until then, make sure you go play some disc golf. Make sure you watch some disc golf. This has been Understable Discourse and this week's edition of Chain Reaction.